Yeah, Stella, baby. Finna get right. Here we go. Yeah, listen. I ain't really tryna hold too much pride. Feeling like Michael, how I beat those odds, yeah. She's a real winner, and I can't deny she fine as wine with time. I don't really care for the clout nor fame, but you better make sure you know my name, yeah. This is real life, and it ain't no game. When you see me in the skyline, knock me down, come back up. Watch her work, watch her strut now. I don't care what they say, I'ma still have my way. I'm alright, that's for sure. I know I can endure. Back and forth, on and on. Yes, I'm on quite a run, yeah.
Welcome to Rooted Within Her, your go-to podcast. We are founded off of Colossians 2:7, where we are rooted in Christ, strengthening our faith, and overflowing with thankfulness. I am Brittany Bossup, your host, a devoted mom, veteran, mental health therapist, author, international keynote speaker, and your wealth and wellness coach. We are going to be talking about mental health, storytelling, relationships, and making sure you feel empowered with a positive mindset each and every day. Make sure you follow us on all social media platforms. That's at Rooted Within Her. And go to our website, rootedwithinher.com, where you can get access to all of our resources to help you if you are a corporation looking to restructure your employee wellness, or if you are a divorced mom and you are looking for those resources to help you heal and rebuild. This is your go-to podcast. Again, that is rootedwithinher.com. Sit back and enjoy. Welcome to Rooted Within Her. We're so excited for you guys to be listening with us today. Today we have a very special guest, Lisa. Hi, Lisa. How are you?
Good, Brittany. How are you?
I am doing amazing. I'm so glad that you have decided to join Rooted Within Her today. Tell us about you. Who are you and what do you do?
So I have a very niche career that, of course, as a child, I never dreamed of having. I'm a high conflict divorce strategist who specializes in something called legal abuse. And that's where someone is using the legal system to wear another person down and bleed them dry financially. And so my partner and I, his name is Chris, we have a business called Been There, Got Out, and we help men and women all over the world going through the worst separations, divorces, custody battles, and co-parenting hell so that they can have the chance of the best outcome in family court and beyond.
Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. And it's really good to know that you've been there, because I always tell people it's hard for people to speak to things that they haven't actually been there.
Right.
And that's a lot. I see it's everywhere. Been through it myself, constantly going back and forth to court. And, I realize as a mental health therapist, I get to work on the other side of working with clients going through that. I realize that we can't control people. All we can do is focus on ourselves, but it's so hurtful. It's draining mentally, physically, emotionally, your bank accounts.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, we're not even thinking about the children, at this point. And so what do you do to help people navigate that? Because that is really challenging.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot, but it is, and I think that it's very isolating, this particular thing, because a lot of our clients tend to be very successful in other areas of their lives. And so people look at them as role models. And when they talk about how they're dealing with this person, everyone else says, how could you have been so foolish? Like, I thought you were smarter than that. And it just is another level of shame. So, a lot of what we do kind of is we kind of fill the role between what lawyers are not trained to do and therapists don't understand. No offense, Brittany, because I'm sure you have radical empathy because you've been through it, but most people have not. So generally, lawyers are trained in logic. And so they come to the table when people are, let's say, in the middle of a divorce or custody battle, thinking everyone's going to settle down and they're going to do what's fair and they're going to do what's best for the kids. But someone like our exes and our clients' exes, they only care about me. And I'm talking about men and women. So We're not gender specific. And so you have to negotiate very differently with someone like that because they don't have the same values. And then therapists often have not experienced the trauma of turning to a justice system for relief and having the opposite happen, having court make things worse by delaying everything, by costing so much money. And then really it feels like an abuser is allowed to get away with it. So it emboldens them.
Yes, it
You're
does.
just like, what do I do? And nobody understands. And people that, your friends will say, oh, you're still in court. Well, why doesn't the judge just do this? Or why doesn't your ex just do that? And you can't control, like you said, you can't control that. So it's really frustrating. So back to your original question, what we do is we basically, we coach people, we strategize with them. We have a weekly legal abuse support group where we kind of, we actually blend our male and female clients together, which is very rare in the domestic violence space. We get into strategy and we get into how your kids can still be okay, especially with a parent like that, and especially how to co-parent with someone that often doesn't really care about putting the kids first or their needs. We focus on a few main areas. One of the big ones is strategic communication, because communicating properly with your ex is the foundation of everything. And ChatGPT doesn't fix your PTSD.
No.
It's a tool. I think a lot of people think somehow it's a miracle. I mean, it helps, but it's not going to take away the trauma, especially from our clients who are all part of what we call, my lawyer says this is the craziest case they've ever had club. So we work with them on taking strategic oversight of their case, like learning to run it like a business, because these are the cases that become overwhelming for attorneys. We also focus a lot on proper presentation. If you're dealing with a custody evaluator, a judge, in mediation, how do you present well so people like you and therefore believe you? Because usually our clients are traumatized. They're like a mess. They're terrified for their lives. They're worrying about their kids and their own safety, and their ex is getting off on this. It's another stage to manipulate. So how do you present well when you feel like that? We teach how to represent yourself or go pro se, which is what I did for 7 years through about 100 court appearances. And I don't think I mentioned this yet, but my case got published as case law, which is a really big deal for a lawyer, but for someone representing herself, everyone says they've never heard of it. So I'm really proud of that. So bringing those skills to the table. And then we do a few other things, but those are the most popular. Working with people on targeted documentation, using your lawyer more efficiently and more effectively if you do have an attorney, but stuff like that.
Yes, because every email, every call, it costs so much money. And I'm like, wait a minute. And then I learned that if they don't have an attorney, that's like ranking up all the fees on you, because they don't care. They don't have an attorney. So they keep calling. I'm like, wait a minute. Now, do not take any more calls.
Right. That's a big problem with us. So on the other side, being pro se or self-represented, they can run up your lawyer bills. So you have to make sure you do what I said earlier, take strategic oversight of your case and say to your lawyer, look, I'm paying the bills. I don't want you to keep talking to this person. Forward everything to me that they send. Don't spend any time answering it. And that's a great tip.
But you have to go through those things to be able to really grasp in your right. And you did say that something that a lot of therapists, they fall short at, is because they haven't actually been through it. And I've noticed that. And it brings me back to, as I kind of laugh at it, as we're trying to figure out, like, what's our purpose? What is our purpose? And we realize that sometimes that changes, but really God's preparing us for that the whole way along the journey. And so as I look at it, we're like, why do I have to go through these things, right? Well, then we realize, why not you? And you can't relate if you haven't been through certain things. And I'm realizing that as clients come to me, they might say, oh, I have this going on, or I had to separate myself from my family, or I had to do these things. And, it's hard for the natural, and when you think about how a normal relationship should work or how things should be, like growing up. Or this was more when I got into the military, I would find like different people talk about their backgrounds and their upbringing. And they would say, oh, yeah, like when their parents, split up, then everybody came together like this big cohesive unit of everybody working together. Like he got remarried and then she brought her kids over and then, you know, da da da. And I'm like, oh, that's really nice because I had never heard of that before. Right. But then you realize that you might think that you could possibly have that, but then you realize it depends on the person that you're with. And you're right. So many people try to say, oh, you didn't see the signs. Well, first of all, you didn't know what signs to look for.
Exactly.
They say the red flags. You don't know they're red when you're going through. And really, like I tell people, you only know what you know. Like growing up, if you were treated like a queen, then there's certain things that you're not going to put up with. But if you weren't told or taught about sex or taught about the different type of people to just entertain, you don't know. And then you get to see the other side of them, which is usually completely different than what everyone else gets to see on the outside. So that's strategic communication that you guys helping people strategize. Like, what do you find is the biggest way, or what are some tips that you can share that you guys can help people with communicating? Because yes, we can only control us, but it is hard because some days you're like, wait, let me tell you.
Yeah. So one thing to remember, which seems crazy, is that someone like our exes, they want our attention. They don't care if it's positive or negative. So they'll bait you. They will say things to get you going because they want you to respond. So learning how to muzzle yourself is a huge skill. It's counterintuitive. And often the way they'll bait you is they'll lie and they'll make false allegations against you. And so you feel this need to defend yourself, just like you did in the relationship, because you were being blamed for so many things. But you have to learn how to shift in your mind and say the goal is detachment. Because they need that audience. And we often say that people are limited. These people are limited to 3 things once you physically separate: money, kids, and the court. And so what they will try to do, because money and the court go hand in hand, is often turn your kids against you too. But to not take the bait is a huge, huge thing to remember. Like, do not give them your attention. And there's a difference between gray rocking, like completely cutting contact. You can't do that either. But it's understanding the things that make a difference and what don't. So, for example, one thing that we tell our clients when they're hearing all these lies and they're getting really triggered and going, I have to, because what if a judge sees this and then they're going to think that it's true? We'll say, and I borrowed this from a friend of ours named Judge Anthony Bompiani. We changed it a little bit, but we just say to write something like, we both know that's inaccurate, because it's not an evidentiary hearing. Yes, your communication is going to be part of a hearing at some point, but you don't need to defend yourself back and forth in writing. So just say, we both know that's inaccurate. Don't get into it. And then if you appear before a judge, then you can use that precious time and energy, but not just in writing. The second thing is understanding how to communicate properly does matter a lot. So really knowing things that that matter to the court. And sometimes people refer to them as best interest factors or custody factors. One of the number one factors is to look at which parent supports the child's relationship with the other parent. And the flip side, which is what our current book is about, is what do is one parent attempting to undermine the child's relationship with a parent? So you have to be very careful in your communication that you're aware of that invisible audience. So you're writing, I always say you're writing to your ex, but you're writing for an invisible audience. So you need to make sure that you are not attacking them directly, because that will come out later. And as another attorney named Yoni Leveritz from New York City told us, someone's anger is the other person's gold, especially the pattern of behavior. So we want to make sure that you don't take the bait and that you write to the other person acknowledging this is your child's other half. So you really want to rein it in. And we also teach this method called FRAC. We just made it up, where we get into like a fact, a response, a universal agreement, and then a gesture of cooperation. Because another thing people don't realize, especially when somebody, let's say, has primary legal decision making, is they think they can just tell the other person what's happening. I'm doing this with our child, I'm going to do that. They don't understand something called what's called the primary parent burden. And that means that the court also wants to see you work together to make decisions. even if you have final say, you still need to, in writing, we always say writing only if possible, have significant, meaningful consultation with the other parent, because that's your kid's other parent.
Right.
However you feel about them, I always think about that invisible audience, the microscope of the court, we call it. Like, you want to know that people are looking at you and they want to see that you are acting like the best co-parent ever. So those are a couple of things to keep in mind. Of course, there's way more, but this is the tip of the iceberg. It is hard, though. It is really, really hard to learn to communicate properly.
Yes, yes. But I'm so glad that you're doing this, because you're right. When you said the niche of the niche, you are so right, because it's so hard. I remember, having to go back to court, and I'm like, you didn't even pay your child support. How in the world? Like,
yeah.
And it's just,
so Brittany, if I could take that and turn it into a strategic communication, I would say something like, it's been 2 months since I received child support from you. I'm surprised, because I'm sure we can both agree how important it is to financially support our children.
Right.
The end.
Right. And
so you're documenting at the same time. There's no emotion. It's just like, I'm surprised why we wouldn't both want the same thing, right?
Right.
Even though the other person's not, in their mind, they're like, I don't believe that, but they can't write. I don't think I should sub finance. You're trapping them. And this starts building like a foundation of a case.
Yes, I actually really love that, because it really gets into like what I do now as far as helping people to really realize, like, what good does that do, to really go round and round and round and round. And as I tie a lot of principles to the biblical principles, like I tell them, like, we look at Jesus' life as an example. If we notice, Jesus answered a lot of questions with questions, and he did not take his time going round and round, back and forth with people. So why should we?
Yeah, right. You're not going to get you're feeding the monster by going around and around, because they're still grasping your attention.
Right.
So you have to figure out a way to extract yourself, not to let the issue go, not at all, but to figure out a way. And it takes practice. But I feel like communication is one of the number one ways to start healing.
Yeah.
Because it turns the power dynamic around in the relationship. And we see it because we work with our clients virtually only, because they're all over the world. I can see it in their faces. When people don't breathe because they're so scared, to see them start to breathe again and be like, oh, it's actually working. Wow. Like you said at the beginning, there's things you can control and there's things you can't. But this is something you can control, and it makes a big difference in your case.
It does. And, I think people really don't understand what that other parent is going through, because mentally you like second guess everything. You don't press send for hours, because you're scared of what they're going to say next, or just having that panic attack and PTSD that comes with it. And, you're right. People on the outside are like, just press send or just say what you have to say, and that's it. But that's not it. Because
no, exactly. That's not it. That's the beginning. That's not the end.
Yes. And then I realized a lot of it goes to like how you analyze things. And if you grew up having a lot of maybe mental or physical abuse, and then you repeated that cycle, in the relationship, and then you chose to break free, but then it's like, are you really free? And you can be utilizing these strategies, because you're right. Once they get you riled up, that's where they want you to be. And then they're like, yes, I got her.
And they're still exerting that control over you.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's important to note that, like, when you keep sort of popping off, they're still controlling you.
Yeah.
And after separation, my lawyer's paralegal, when I first got divorced, she said the power dynamic increases tenfold. Like, what it was in the relationship, it just blows up, because they're losing that control.
Right.
So just remember that. Do you want them still to have control over your life? And of course, it feels like they do, because we meet people like 8 years and plus after divorce or separation, and they're still living with this sense of dread. I don't know what my ex is going to do. What if they take me back to court? Oh my gosh, if I'm not the perfect parent, I might lose my kids.
Right.
They're just scared. They live with fear all the time. So I think communication is the way to start being like, no,
And
yeah.
it is because they already know like the way that their dynamic was. If one thing you did wrong, they could do 1,000 things wrong.
Right? Double
But
standard.
you did one thing wrong, and it's like you did this and da da da. And you're like, okay.
I know. There's a guy that we interviewed years ago. He's a bodyguard named Steve Dana. And I love this quote. He said, it's an abuser's greatest tool is fear. Because when you're scared of them, they can do anything.
Right.
And that's why it's so important also to know your rights. Like when you are getting out of this relationship, don't believe them when they say you don't need a lawyer. You know how much money I have. We don't need to do, we can do, you find out your rights before you just stay in that web of whatever they're telling you. Because a lot of it's not true.
That is so true. And then, to think about the weight that bears and knowing that you still have to be the best emotional support you can for yourself, your children. You still have to show up to work. And so being able to release that fear, that is freedom in itself.
Really. And it's not just freedom for you now, because the more regulated you are, the better your children's lives will be, because they won't feel that you are dependent on them or that you're a mess. Like kids, their lives are chaos with separation, whether it's high conflict or not. And so the best thing you can do is keep it together yourself. So you're going to need help with that. So if you can keep it together and you feel good, they're going to feel good because they absorb all that. And that's why we really want people to do whatever they can to turn the volume down on the conflict, because it bleeds onto your kids. And then there's intergenerational trauma with the same patterns, like you said, not just in your own life, but your kids, because we gravitate towards what's familiar. No matter what you say, don't be like me. We're going to be like you, because that's their lives too.
Yes, you're right. And everything repeats. And that's why it's so important for us to really break the cycles. That reminds me, I had a client who talked about how her mom had to move out of one state to another because she had gotten married the max amount of times that you can get married. And so she found herself repeating that cycle as well. And you just never know. And that's why we really have to do the work on ourselves, do the work to say, okay, you know what, we're going to break this cycle, but also explaining that to our children. I think that's something that's missed from generation to generation. It's not really taking the time to realize, okay, you know what, I did some things that weren't necessarily right, or I only knew what I knew how to do. But, I really want the best for you guys, and don't repeat the cycle. This is a cycle. This is what it costs me for having to go through this. So please don't you go through that. If you can avoid it, just making them be aware is important.
Right. And being a role model.
Yeah.
Like, say, this is really hard for me, and I've made this much progress. And now your lives are hopefully going to be different because you're not under the roof watching me being taken advantage of.
That's right. Right.
And you don't deserve something like that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, because people are going to repeat what they see and hear. And not so much of you telling them, don't do this. No, they need to actually see you lead by example. So I love it. Well, tell our listeners, how can they connect with you so they can get started with working with you? What does that look like? And how can they get started and connected?
Super easy. Our website is beentheregotout.com. My email is lisa@beentheregotout.com. We have a podcast. We have a YouTube channel. We have a pretty big presence on social media, especially Instagram in particular, just @BeenThereGotOut with little underscores. And just find us that way. It's the easy thing. Oh, and our first book came out in 2023. It's also called Been There, Got Out: Toxic Relationships, High Conflict Divorce, and How to Stay Sane Under Insane Circumstances. And actually, in a week, we're submitting the final draft of our current book to the publisher, which will be out in January 26th. And it's called How to Handle When You're, or it's called, actually not How to Handle It. They made me take that out. When Your Ex Turns the Kids Against You. Since that's a big thing in our community, a whole other thing. So in court and in life, how to deal with a parent that's trying to poison the well.
Yes, I'm so glad you guys are having, both of these books are amazing, but I'm so glad y'all have that one because I have so many women that come to me and they're like, he's saying this to the kids and the kids are saying this, and they're trying to go over and above to try to write the narrative right for the children and, to be like, oh, that wasn't right. And the more you confront your ex, they're not going to stop it.
Right. Because you're doing the same thing that your ex is doing. You're telling them what to think.
Right.
And you're not letting them draw their own conclusions. There's a lot to do. And again, it's counterintuitive because you think it's the same pattern, false allegations through your child, this one parent saying that you're like this, and you want to defend yourself, and it doesn't work. There's ways to do it.
Yes. Oh my God.
A whole other conversation.
Yes. Well, with Charles' new book, you're definitely going to have to come back on in January. So definitely excited about that. And so listeners, make sure you guys connect with Lisa. Been there, got out. She's been through it. She can help you through it, as we know that this is a very weighing and challenging time. And sometimes your family and friends, they don't know how. They want to support you, but they just don't know how. So as we come to a close, do you have like a favorite quote or scripture you would love to leave our listeners, or just words of empowerment today?
Well, let's see. Empowerment. I am the worst at remembering quotes. I know for me, it's just mean what you say and say what you mean. Like stick to stuff, do it. But it doesn't fit exactly with this. I always say my own quote is like, the air is so much cleaner on the other side. It is so much better. Like you just need to get help and support from people that really understand and can carry you through. But the air is so much cleaner on the other side.
Oh, goodness. I love that. I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Lisa, for being a special guest on Rooted Within Her. And we look forward to having you on again in the future.
Thanks, Brittany. It was a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you for listening to Rooted Within Her, your number one go-to podcast. If you heard something today that resonated with you, make sure you screenshot, tag us on all social media platforms. Tell us what your thoughts were, what were your takeaways, and make sure you go to rootedwithinher.com so you can access all of our resources, join our challenges, find out about life coachings, and don't forget about our amazing, phenomenal retreats. So make sure you go to rootedwithinher.com. And again, thank you for listening. And I want you to have a super phenomenal day because you are God's masterpiece.
Say, I must still have my way. I'm alright.